We are delighted to announce Burren Nature Sanctuary is coming out of the COVID-19 lockdown, as per government advice, on July the 1st. We are currently working on our social distancing procedures, and visitors will find quite a few changes. There will be a socially distanced queue at admissions and perspex safety screens at the counters, and a one-way system operating at the site. There'll be sanitising stations in various areas, and a twice daily full sanitation of the internal building. We're not allowed to run animal handling sessions, but we'll have animal feeding stations set up around the nature walk. We will be operating a reduced menu, but don't worry, our famous Tom Tom coffee will still be available. We'll be using compostable takeaway cups to avoid staff handling crockery. We are working on our procedures to keep our staff and customers safe, and may have to adjust things as we go, when we see how it all works. We have bookable guided fairy family walks and wildflower walks on our website for family groups of up to 10 people. Our biodiversity audio guide is on our free app, so you can take a self-guided tour too. The wild orchids are out and our collection of Burren flora is at its peak. It was sad shutting our doors on March the 7th, and it is a very difficult process to unlock them on July the 1st. A silver lining from this pandemic was the Nature Magic podcast, which has been so rewarding. It was great timing to reach out to people to talk to, as they were all captive at home and nearly everyone was free for half an hour Zoom chat. We will be continuing the podcast, but may move to fortnightly episodes over the summer. From the podcast, a book is sprouting, Nature Magic, the Fairy Pig Walk, and other 5-star strategies to engage people with nature. Podcast guests have been asked if we can include some of their answers as quotes, as we think there's such a lot of useful and fun information here. We still welcome any support for our conservation projects and urge you to visit our online shop, which has lovely gifts and even animal adoptions. We're a small business and we'll be trying to hang on by the skin of our teeth until summer 2021, when hopefully tourists will return. We have recently heard that sadly the famous Dungora Castle in the village will not be reopening due to COVID-19, and many small businesses will not open their doors again. We wish everyone well and thank you for listening to us. Let's work together towards a happier, healthier planet.
If I had a magic wand that worked, Mary, I think I would get rid of plastic and pesticides.
Today, I'm speaking to Dr. Catherine Farrell. Catherine is an ecologist, specialising in restoration ecology and how to revive degraded natural systems. She has worked on wetland and woodland systems across Ireland and internationally, with a particular focus on how to bring industrially used peatlands back to life. She is currently working as a research fellow in Trinity College Dublin, with her attention now fixed on how to develop natural capital accounting. Catherine is a founding member of the Irish Forum on Natural Capital and works with businesses and nature agencies to bring the role of nature into broader discussions around ecosystem health, ecosystem services, natural capital, and natural capital accounting and sustainable environments. She is also a published author and likes to dabble in the arts under her married name of Catherine Wilkie. Her novel, The Easter Snow, was published and launched in May 2019. Welcome to one of Ireland's greatest advocates for nature, Catherine Farrell.
Hi, Catherine. It's lovely to speak to you today.
Well, today I am in sunny Tullamore in the Midlands of Ireland. This is my base now for the last 15 or so years. And I am sitting in what I call now my cave, which is my office since lockdown. And I've been working from home and juggling having 2 small children in the house at the same time. So it's been interesting. Yeah.
Well done. Well done. That is hard. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your role is?
Well, I suppose I have done many things in my career, and presently I'm working as a postdoctoral researcher in Trinity College Dublin. I'm working on a project called INCASE. It's Irish Natural Capital Accounting for Sustainable Environments. It's an absolute mouthful, so we'll just say INCASE. And it's somewhat pioneering in that it's trying to figure out how we might basically be more accountable for what we do with nature. So it's developing accounts for our natural capital. Our natural capital is our stocks of woodlands, grasslands, the different ecosystems, geosystems that we have, and I suppose being more aware of how we're using up the stocks and recognizing that, the flows of services that we get, we have to make sure that we can sustain those into the future. So, it's really interesting. I'm really enjoying it. It's a big change for me, given that I spent over 20 years before working on bogs, and specifically very, very, very tired, very used bogs that needed some tender love and care. And I worked with Bord na Móna in the Midlands and in the West, rehabilitating peatlands. So when peatlands have been used for industrial purposes, they can come back to wetlands or woodlands or, other habitats. So it was sort of getting creative with habitat restoration and obviously minding the bits that were very intact that we needed to restore and bring back to a bog ecosystem. So I guess I've had a few different hats. I've also tinkered in music and in the arts and in writing as well. So I suppose
The INCASE project sounds amazing. I suppose the first thing you have to do is count up what we have. That's, to make it in very simple sort of way, and see what we have and then decide, how we mind it and what we do with it.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Even the way you've described it there, because we don't do that. We do designations reasonably well, like we can draw lines on maps and say, well, we shouldn't go in there and we need to look after that. But, nature is everywhere. So within farming systems, it's within, public lands, it's, otters and badgers and hedgerows, they're nature corridors and species move along them. So I think it's just about recognizing the hidden wealth that's there for us, and that it doesn't come into the books traditionally. We're very good at saying how much money we have and how much money we've spent, but it's not reflected in the quality of the environment that we have. And these are the hidden costs of some of the food that we eat, or the things that we produce. And
exactly.
It's about getting that onto the radar.
Until we know what we have, we can't see what we've lost or gained, hopefully, as you keep going with this.
Exactly. So accounting is fantastic from that perspective. You look at the books, you say, well, I have this much this year, it's in this condition, which means it's working well. This other stuff over there, that's not working very well. So we better go and look after that. And, so it's about putting the resources in the right places.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the bogs as well, but how did you become a nature lover? Do you remember where it all started?
I was hooked from an early age, I have to say. I grew up in a small farm in Westmeath, in South Westmeath, and it was a dairy farm. Of course, it started out as a mixed farm, and I suppose over the course of my lifetime, I've watched how, that change in the Irish landscape went from sort of rural, very mixed farming to very intensive over a very short period of time. And I saw that, and I worked to develop that on the farm, because I spent most of my childhood picking stones, which, a lot of Irish kids that grew up on farms did, to reclaim the land. And I guess I just love being outdoors. And I suppose both my parents had a good, strong respect for nature. My mother was always outside gardening. You know, she hated housework, and we'd be left to do that. And then my dad, you know, he just loved the wildlife. You know, he'd always be, you know, checking out, you know, where the fox was, and, you know, telling you what flowers or what grasses were there. And so he knew, like, they grew up in a sort of idyllic time that was very poor.
Your grandparents lived in the same house?
Oh, yeah.
The same farm, yeah.
Yeah. My parents went to the same national school, and, you know, then our family home was just a couple of miles from where they were born and grew up. And so it was a very local, very idyllic, you know. We brought in the hay, and I spent most of my childhood milking cows, and, you know, so, but also I could recognize, you know, I started to explore, you know, the esker that ran along the bottoms of the farm. You know, every farm has the bottoms, you know, it's the furthest bit from the house or the road. And we had a beautiful esker there. And I used to go there and just really notice the orchids and the grasses and the rushes, the wood rushes, and then a beautiful hazel woodland with yew trees. And I just loved being there. And it was so different from the, you know, the improved grassland side where we'd spent all our years picking stones and mowing out the hedgerows, and the beautiful hawthorns that used to be on the farm. So I could see that difference, and the difference in terms of diversity, and just such a beautiful space to be in, where you hear birdsong. And I suppose that's where I got my love for nature. And then I knew I wanted to work with nature, so I decided I wanted to be a zoologist. And my career guidance counsellor at the time said, why don't you go and be a doctor, because then you can save all the people who are being zoologists and all this, because I wanted to go off to Africa and save the elephants. And, you know, it's weird, that line of thinking. But anyway, I stuck with it, and I loved biology, geography and physics, and I loved the whole philosophy of it. You know, I loved the writing side and exploring the ideas of how we're all connected and that sort of thing. And so I studied zoology and botany in UCD, and that was fantastic, because going from rural Ireland, and then, you know, your teaching is about the different habitats that you didn't encounter so often at home. And, you know, the bogs, and, you know, the coastal habitats, the marine. We had a fantastic teacher, Brenda Healy in UCD, and she was so passionate about the marine and the coastal habitats. And then, of course, the fun, the first field trip when we went to the Burren in third year, that was just amazing. I could not get over the little gems, you know, the small things, and been shown them by, you know, the experts. And, you know, we great, you know, postgraduate demonstrators who now I know I've worked with since, and they live in the Burren, some of them. I know you know some of them. And we just, things like mountain everlasting and beautiful little ferns and grasses. So I just, after that field season, if I was hooked before, I just knew my career path was, I want to work in these landscapes, or I need to do something. That's my reason for being here. And then when I finished my undergraduate, a PhD was advertised to work on restoration of industrial bogs in Mayo. And I just thought, restoration, ecology, and that was me. I was gone. And then, of course, it was Mayo. And Mayo was just so exotic to me. And thus began my love affair with Mayo and
the bogs.
Boggy, yeah. It was great.
Do you have a favourite plant or animal?
Oh, no, I'm desperate because if you ask me, whatever habitat I'm in, I will decide that is my favorite plant or animal. But so even this morning, I went for my walk on the Grand Canal and the swallows were swooping down on the water. And, it's often the most common local things that I just love and I adore. But if I was to pick something out, it would be wetland birds. I just that collective of curlew, skylarks, lapwing, the curlew cry is so evocative. And though we see and hear them a lot in the wintertime along coasts, or where they flock, they quite a lot of numbers come to the Lochborough Parklands, which is quite near where I live, and they're really pinched in terms of their breeding success. And then, so when you see them or you hear them during the summer, you're near a healthy bog. So that's a really good indicator.
Obviously, bogs are one of your top habitats. Would you say that? Or would you just love all the different habitats?
There's something about an open bog, and I suppose it goes back to when my first field season. So when I was doing my research, I was on my own all the time, and I was heading out into Atlantic Blanket Bog on the west coast. No one in sight for miles. You could see for miles, and just that sky reflected in the bog pools, in the bog lakes, the skylarks around you, and the breeze. Now, I would never go out when there was no breeze because that was when the midges were going to get you. But just that they're just splendid and profound, and so poor as well, because always viewed as the sort of poor relation in terms of land and what it can give to you, and always seen as something to be used and trod on and drained. And I just I suppose there's a bit of the underdog there, that you want to fight for the underdog to make sure that they're put on top. But there's such interesting places, and wetlands in general. Anything that's a wetland is doing so much for us, so much work for us in terms of. Eamon de Butler always said the wetlands are the kidneys of the earth, and he was passionate about them. And I think, even meeting these people and working with them in some way, little bits rub off on you, and they're just fantastic places.
Yeah, I love that, the kidneys of the earth. I haven't heard that before. I had a very intimate encounter with a bog drain years ago when I was 20. So we were with a group of horses going across the bog, and my horse was a young grey horse. He was pretty much white, a very light roan. Anyway, he shied at something and he just cat jumped sideways, and we went down into a bog drain. The two of us submerged completely. So anyway, I managed to get off him and pull him out. Everyone helped me pull him out. And then the person that owned the horse came trotting up to me and said, "Where did you get that horse?" Because he was completely black.
Oh my gosh. Oh, the poor fella.
Your horse.
Oh my gosh. You were lucky.
Yeah, he was fine. But yeah, bogs. So, I mean, how do you see a future for small scale turf cutting, or how are we going to manage that whole very difficult and multi issue? Is there a way?
Yeah, there's always a way. And I think it's just season by season, we figure out more how to embrace renewable technology. And, I really see, most of the people on the road that I live, they bring in their own turf. So it's very much deeply ingrained in Irish culture, and especially rural culture. And I do think that over time, and with awareness about its impact on the climate, its impact on the actual habitat itself, which can be reversed, so, even though we say a bog is cut away, you can always do something with that, to get it back working again, to get the system fired up and re-wet the peat and get the sphagnum growing. But it's slow. It's a slow process. And there's been so much debate around it. I try and stay away from the debate, because until there's a policy shift and the government really gets behind and starts supporting retrofitting homes and, just really doing the hard work. And then some people would just like to be on the bog, and at a certain point, people will decide, well, I'm not bending down for like 3 days to turn this turf, but it's cheap fuel. It's cheap fuel when you put all the work in yourself. So there has to be supports for people to switch over. And I don't think people necessarily, they definitely don't go out to intentionally harm the land or, harm the planet. But, so there's a job around raising awareness about the impacts.
Yeah, people have sentimental memories of childhood and going to the bog, and even though they hated it because it's such hard work and turning the turf and bringing it in, but they like to bring their children now because it brings you back to actually doing manual labour. But I think if there was more awareness, and maybe people would go to the bog for the nature, if you could give them an alternative that we don't need to go to the bog to cut all the turf and turn it and stack it and all of this.
Oh, no.
We go and look at the heathers. And
and we go to the bog all the time. I bring my my children and my husband, who didn't have a pair of wellies before I met him. So we go to the bog, and like Alana now, she can't wait to go to the bog because we're going to see the butterflies, and we bring the nets and we check out the birds, and she sees a different side of it. And sometimes we see turf and it's like, what's that? So, well, that's just turf, let's move on and find more butterflies, so it's all about what you think is right. So it's all down to our perceptions, and it goes back to, I mentioned I was always interested in the natural sciences, but it's how we perceive it and how our traditions and our philosophies, so that's a big part of how we view nature. Is it something to be dominated and controlled? Or, in other philosophies and traditions, it's more about being part of nature and being part of that great web of life. So I think we have to consider that view as well, and change, not that we have to change our way of thinking, but explore different ways of thinking about nature.
I think people are fearful of losing the traditions and the culture, but if they were offered a different viewpoint, they can exchange it for that rather than just saying, oh, we're losing this culture. But that is a tricky one. As I said to Jane when we were talking about contact, talk about the bogs, but we have to tread softly because it's so the next question is, do you feel spiritually connected to nature? I know when you were a child you definitely felt it down in the Esker on the farm, and where would you feel it these days, or have you had any experiences you'd like to talk about?
Oh gosh, well, every day I go out into the Charleville Woods, which is beside us, and I have to reconnect with it. I have to get out into the woods and sort of immerse myself into that, just to reset myself. So there's that sense of peace. And as I say, when I started my research and I spent those long days out on the bogs, you'd be out from very early, going back. I was staying in Ballina in a house of my own, and it's just that sense of being part of something bigger than ourselves, and but feeling part of it, not feeling disconnected from it. That we're born of nature, and then we're in it. So a lot of people say, well, isn't nature amazing? But aren't we amazing? Because we're a product of this natural world. Nature has created us, and so just I think I try and bring it in to every day, just to get that sense of peace and stillness that reminds you why I'm even trying to account for nature, why I'm trying to bring it on the books, because I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's everything. It's everything for us, and we're very much a product of it. We shouldn't be chastising ourselves all the time and being so negative. We should say, yeah, come on, we're part of this, and we can make a difference, and we're not separate from it. So we're healthy.
Yeah, we're a facet of nature. I think if people can look at it that way. But I'm so glad it recharges you and gets you back to the books so you could do all the accounting for everybody, because it's an important job.
Yeah,
There was a lot of research done recently on forest bathing, and the trees emit, I'm not sure what, I can't remember, but I'll put the link in the show notes. And apparently all you need is 20 minutes, and that'll do you for a month to get the health benefits. So if you can only get out into the forest for 20 minutes a month, try and do it.
Oh, yeah. And do you know what? Fresh air. I reckon if they did the same study now and said if you can walk down a country lane and see wildflowers, and even now, if you go out anywhere now of an evening or in the morning, the honeysuckle is just overwhelmingly beautiful. It turned my head this morning. I was like, where's that coming from? So it's there's so many benefits. And just walk down the street, and I think people learn that during this COVID time that, explore the hedgerows and the back ways and the back lanes, and just even if you're in the town, what's growing on the walls, and, there's stuff flying in the sky at the same time. So, yeah, the forests, so they're pretty special. Yeah.
Yeah. I think everybody can connect, even if you're in prison, you can look at the clouds unless you're in solitary confinement. But I mean, that's one thing.
Yeah, they didn't put us there yet.
No. Can you suggest a positive action that people could take to encourage people to do to help nature?
Oh, there's so many things. If you wanted sort of, a quick win, just look outside in your own garden. Okay. And I think, what can I do? And you can go online, you can figure things out, but just spend time and just watch and notice nature. So what I have found is that what you see and what you get to know, you begin to value more. So that changes your value system. Whereas if you don't see it, you don't know it. So how can you even bring it into the picture? Mm. And then, of course, if somebody says, well, we have to think about this, then if you don't understand it, you feel threatened. So my tuppence would be just get out and take 5 minutes and see what bees are buzzing around or what butterflies. Like, this is the perfect time of the year. See what's flying in the sky. But yeah, so notice nature. And like there's the other side of it, which is be aware that everything you do has an impact, so that's the local piece. But just bear in mind, the food we eat, the clothes you buy, the stuff you have in your homes. This is where we get into that globalization, and that, what we have, it's so cheap. Your food is cheaper now than ever it was, because it doesn't take into account the true cost of what it took to get it there. You can buy 3 garlics from China for less than €1. It's insane, or where is the actual true cost of the impact on the climate? Or, if you're in a very intensively managed system and, you get a cheap meat or cheap vegetable, whatever, like, is that really reflecting the cost? So we all need to ask those questions. And I know people go, oh, that's so boring, and you're such a killjoy, and I want to have my asparagus from Peru and all these sorts of things. Just think about it, because there's really good stuff produced locally. There's so much good stuff, and it tastes so good. If you've ever grown your own stuff in the garden, your own potatoes, it's like heaven.
So it's really back to the accounting, isn't it?
To taking account and taking stock and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the cheap meal, people don't really, they think about the Amazon and the fires and everything, but the cheap meal coming in to feed our cattle, a lot of it's coming from there. And, it's great, I can buy a bag of cow nuts for €7. How could that be possible? That is too cheap. The other thing you were saying about going outside and noticing what's there, I mean, there's been a guerrilla botanist in Kinvara marking up plants on the sidewalk or on the pavement. But I think if you can take a guidebook with you, just to see, because once you know something's name, and we label the herbs here, and we've even labeled dock and nettles, and simple things. Once people know a plant's name, it's more of an introduction. And then you say, oh yes, the next time you see it, that's the nettle or whatever. So I think labeling is a good way to engage people. Did you have any other thoughts on engaging people with nature, kind of activities, maybe for group or something like that?
Oh, you can't be being with someone who knows what they're talking about.
A guided walk. Yeah.
I have learned so much from being with other ecologists, botanists, zoologists, bat experts. You go out and you learn so much in the space of 10 minutes. And, there's people like living legends like John Feehan. He has developed this set of videos and over the summer, and they're available on the Offaly Heritage. If you go to the Offaly Heritage Facebook page, you'll find them. And it's like, those videos are like 5 minutes, but he packs in so much knowledge and information, and he's so personable, and he makes it so accessible. So I think getting out with your local, even if it's your local amateur ecologist, and you're going for a walk in the bog, taking the time to do that, and then they catch the pond dipping, put the net in the pond, and they get the pond skaters, and then suddenly something else comes in, and it's totally unchoreographed, because you can't tell what's going to appear on any given day. And like I said, I remember doing the Dawn course with Ricky Whelan from Birdwatch Ireland a couple of years ago, and I learned so much. Like, I was supposed to be there as an expert, and as someone who knew, and we had snipe, and we had woodcock, and we had he just knew every sound that was played. It might only last for 5 seconds, and I wanted to just wrap it all up and bring it home and play it back. And I suppose that's the other side, that the videos and resources that are online now, and there are amazing apps, to bring out with you. That's fine. Do that, but do go on those nature walks when you see them advertised or when they're locally available, because that's the stuff in your hedgerow, or that's the stuff in your woods, and that's how you're going to connect with it. A friend of mine, I ended up, going and being the demonstrator on these Burren field trips when I became a postgrad. And a friend of mine said to me that every time she meets a new plant, she says, that's a new friend. I'm meeting a new friend. It's a new acquaintance. And I just thought, you could look at that and say, that's totally hippy-dippy. Oh my God. But it's so true. Because then you see it again, and it's like, oh, it looks different there. Well, it's a bit brighter, it's a bit darker. And then even my daughter is asking me hard questions. Well, why is that one a bit more pink? The little mountain everlasting, we found it here near home. And, why is that one a bit pink in the center? And, why is that sundew really small and that one over there is really big? So it's just recognizing that they're all different, just as each human is different and every cow in the field is different. It's just they all have their own personality in a way. And you could say I'm a total hippie, but I'm okay with that, you know.
That's absolutely fine. I think that's really good advice, actually. Just get your local nature person. Gordon Darcy around here does a fabulous dawn chorus walk.
Oh,
and my friend,
can imagine.
Yeah, I haven't been on it, but my friend was telling me, so they all met in Ballyvaughan and it was dark and they were going along the road waiting for the sun to come up, and Gordon was like, shh, I think I hear a blackbird. Everybody come over here. So about 30 people with binoculars were looking through this hedge, and then the light went off and the lady walked out of her shower in the on the top floor, and she looked into the garden and there were 30 people with binoculars looking at a garden in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, that's a funny story.
Yeah, that's just one of the side effects of noticing nature.
Yeah, but so what do you have any favourite or inspiring nature books you'd like to tell people about, recommend?
Gosh, there's some great ones, like, and they've probably been flagged before, but the likes of James Lovelock's book on Gaia theory, and Fritjof Capra has a really good sort of just brings together a lot of the information about systems, and it's called The Web of Life. I found that very very inspiring in terms of just connecting the dots between all the different components of nature. Of course, my friend Paddy Woodward launched a book a few years ago called Our Once and Future Planet, and he writes so well. You know, between Paddy and Michael Viney in the Irish Times, just really beautiful writing, and weaves the human story into the restoration projects that Paddy writes about. So I was lucky enough that Paddy featured some of my own work in that as well.
Lovely. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your book and some of your writing?
Yeah, well, I suppose I've always been writing and interested in how words weave together to be so powerful. And so I started off with just, the usual book of poetry and writing bits and pieces, and then it morphed into music. So I was a rock star for a while, and just a very local rock star in Ballina. And then I took that to the next level. When I moved back up to the Midlands and we bought this house, it was just an inspiring place and a beautiful kitchen table, an old wooden table, and I just started to write this story, and it's called The Easter Snow. And over the course of a few years, I pulled it together while, having two small children at the same time. So maternity leave was great for that. And it's called The Easter Snow. It's set in the Midlands, and it's not a sort of apocalyptic climate change book, which says it's always going to snow at Easter time. It's more about that connection with our home place and with the land that we were brought up in. And I suppose there's a central character who's forced to leave her home in the 1950s, and then when she comes back and how it has changed and how she sort of feels coming back to the home place and reconnecting with those roots and family. But when I was writing it, I walk every day in Charleville Wood, so that was really coming into the writing, and each section and chapter is broken up by whatever flower is in bloom. So it begins with snowdrops and sort of begins at the sort of start of February and moves into September. And so we move from snowdrops into daffodils and bluebells. And I really enjoyed writing it. We launched it last May, so it's been out and about. And yeah, it's written under my married name. So I have two personalities, really, Mary. I have this sort of, person over here who can write fiction and novel, and then this other person who's, the accountant person. So I enjoyed writing it, and I've really enjoyed hearing back what people feel about it. And it's back to that. It's back to that whole how you connect with nature. And for me, the poets and the writers, and creating that picture, Seamus Heaney's poetry, that reflections on nature, on the ordinary, like Kavanagh saw beauty in, the upturned stone, and, Clark and his evocative images of, the cattle hid in their breathing, it's and the blackbird, turning up the silver grasses, and then you move into more sort of contemporary people like Mary Oliver, and that they can say that which we can't, but they can say it in like 3 words, and suddenly we're brought to a place of deeper understanding of nature, and that's just that is an art. And if I was ever to aspire to anything, it would be that you could convey the different values and the different sentiments and the different the different aspects of nature through your writing, and then people connect, because we love words. We love pictures, so that brings you into the visual arts. So I'm very much a proponent of bringing the arts and nature together. I think that it is a really powerful place, and you can go on a walk, or then you can look at a painting or hear a piece of music or hear a song, and that really strikes a chord with the human psyche. And that sort of associating that wonderful memory with that nature. And, I think that's a really good platform to communicate the values of nature, rather than a stale report or paper, or, and that's really important as well. And I write those things all the time. So I try and mix it up.
Yeah. I think if successful art communicates a feeling, even if you're looking at a picture or reading a book, if the artist can actually convey that feeling, that's the real genius of it. I think that's so powerful. And if you had a magic wand and you could do one thing or more, because people want to do more than one, to help the planet today, what would you do?
Yeah, if I had a magic wand that worked, Mary, I think I would get rid of plastic and pesticides. And I would replace them, because you need replacements. You can't just say, oh, well, just get rid of them. You just replace them with naturally created materials. And I think that would make a huge difference. And not just that we had replaced them, but people knew why we didn't need these things, or why we didn't use them, because they're so negative on the nature around us, and all the microplastics and all these things. So yeah, if I had a magic wand that worked, but given that I don't have a magic wand, I think that this pandemic actually, that we're in, is can be the catalyst or the magic wand for change. And even if it's to say, leave people, let them work at home a couple of days a week. Don't throw them into long traffic streams. Let them be at home with their families. Let them, hear the birds' song in the morning when they're having their tea outside in the garden. And, so I think that might be the catalyst. And so, yeah, I think I'll go with this pandemic catalyst to help us make some changes in our lives.
No, that's brilliant. And I'd love it if we could do your 2 wishes as well. Hopefully they'll be done on stage. I think the COVID lockdown has made everybody think. We've learned some lessons. So I know you have to get on, Catherine, and you've children and work and everything. So thank you so much for talking to us. It was really so interesting. I'm sure people are going to love to hear about everything you've been doing. And thank you very much for all your work.
Well, thank you, Mary, and great work on your podcast. And yeah, obviously I'll just keep trucking away, and there's going to be a lot of debate in the future about natural capital accounting, and you'll get people saying, that's terrible, how can you do that to nature, how can you squeeze it into boxes? And I'll say, well, yeah, I agree with you. And then, so we have to have that conversation, but for sure we have to have the conversation. You can't just pretend, that there isn't a crisis. So I look forward to engaging with people on that.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary.
Thank you for listening to the Nature Magic podcast. Please feel free to get in touch for any reason whatsoever. We would love to hear suggestions as to who you would like to hear speaking on the podcast, or any other questions. I will put my email in the show notes. Please visit the Burren Nature Sanctuary website at www.bns.ie and follow us on Facebook and Instagram to find out all about us. We welcome contributions towards our conservation projects and animal adoptions. Links to these can be found on the website shop page. And we also sell some beautiful locally sourced Irish gifts, such as wild Atlantic seaweed baths, avoca rugs, and Irish fairy tales. We have gift cards for entrance when we are open again. All support is greatly appreciated. We will be back next Monday. Stay safe.